This is the Fixer Punk Podcast, the podcast that isn't hiring a fitness and nutrition coach for this summer's physique, because we know that we're going to need the money to pay our student loans come September. I'm Grayson Peltier. So this is the second part of the episode that I did last week discussing the Repressed Warrior Paradox. This is where I'm going into some more practical steps as to what to do if you fit into that typology that I explained on last week's episode. And it's pretty important because you don't want to, whether you're an activist, whether you're somebody with some sort of unique characteristics, has somewhat of a different way of going about life, and you want to get the best performance out of yourself, you want to get the best outcome as an advocate, if you want to get the best outcome in terms of campaigning, or if you just want to have your business and career succeed while having that sort of difference about you, whatever that may be, that other people are both ridiculing you for at the same time, but also viewing you as the biggest threat in the world for, then you're going to want to take action and not go into a fight blind and untrained and not even knowing that you were in such a fight. So go back to last week's episode if you have not listened to it already. But to put things simply, the Repressed Warrior Paradox is basically where those with strong potential are held down and being fought back against out of proportion with what you'd expect. And you don't realize that it's because of your extremely strong potential to create both social change and personal victory. And people who experience this, and in many cases myself, because they don't see their own potential, you'll back down or you'll be blindsided and not be prepared. And this actually means this is a good thing, even though what the main characteristic of this is getting beaten when you're already down. So if you are in a situation where either you as an individual or as part of a group, you're realizing that people are basically kicking you when you're down, when your ideas seem to show that you are in the worst place possible. You are dealing with some sort of oppression on a systemic level. You're maybe working through a personal challenge like some sort of disability. Maybe you're dealing with a economic injustice, and especially anything related to economic injustice. If you're advocating for change, for better conditions in the workplace, for better social welfare policies, especially for better policies around disabilities, for reparations for people of color. And those are just a few examples. The LGBTQ community as well. It is more likely than not that you're going to experience this repressed warrior paradox where you know that you have strong potential. You also, at the same time, are being told that you're weak, lazy, and a whiner by others. Meanwhile, others are fighting you and fighting against your ideas and the change that you're going for as being the worst threat in the entire world. And it's the actions of those who are oppressed to seek political or economic power is what's going to get you to get that kind of response, that both that teasing response and also that response of you're the biggest threat in the world. For example, like Black Lives Matter is seen by some conservatives as both being weak crybabies and also the greatest threat to America of all time. And that contradiction is basically, in a way, it can get you to internalize repressive ideas. So the performance steps that I'm explaining today are going to be super important because you need to be in a good position. Even if you're being seen as excessively sensitive and you're dealing with this paradox, you need to be strong enough to actually overcome that, and you don't want to internalize it because internalizing repressive ideas will result in you losing your ability to create change and destroying your personal potential as well. If you take into account the way they're telling you you're weak and you're lazy, and you're also seeing this immense amount of force going against you, that anytime you go and you try to advocate for something, you try to ask for something more at work, you try to go to a city council meeting or whatever, you are being beaten down very easily. And then you're also being told that you're weak and you're lazy for holding these ideas, and that you're less than for fighting for change and equality. That combination can get into you and make you believe that what you're doing is just not worthwhile. And it can cause you to basically be defeated. So these steps are going to be very critical, both for yourself personally and also for your advocacy work if you're doing that. But even if you're just a person who's going about and you're realizing, why the heck, when I ask for something that's like the bare minimum of human dignity, I'm getting fought back against with the force of a Mack truck. This is something that you need to think about. You need to think about taking some steps to make sure that you're prepared. And the first thing that I want to explain is that you may not be able to rely on the normal systems that exist in society. So you will likely have to be more prepared and stronger than normal, even as people perceive you as weaker, or especially when you are in need. And this is the really sad part, is that because our society is basically built to serve people under a certain stereotype, whether we're talking racial, gender, socioeconomic stereotype, ability, the systems that are in place, the very limited systems that we have to try to help people, the systems that we have for people to try to grow and advance, to become better people, to improve their education, their income, even the healthcare system, those things may not be designed for people that are coming from an oppressed background, and especially they're not going to like is kind of a funny word, but I can't think of a better word for it. Somebody who is coming from an oppressed minority type background, or from a background that is otherwise socially ostracized, who has strong potential, who is strong-willed, and who has the potential to succeed. They're especially not going to like that. Again, you walk into the welfare system with a great degree and a great education, with a good amount of with a good amount of professional experience, but you lost your job, you may be sent back into a low-wage job as a janitor, like I explained in the last episode. The systems are not necessarily going to be there to help you the same way they would other people. That's not a reason not to advocate. Obviously, one of the key messages of this is that you need to advocate for better systems that can support all people to reach their full potential. But systems are maybe not going to be there for you. From a policy perspective, social safety nets are designed with a quote-unquote average person in mind, and with other interests in mind as well. Largely just conformity and capitalism, sometimes real estate, community nuisance, NIMBY stuff as well. Because it's basically a matter, like I was explaining in the homelessness episode, of just getting people that are a nuisance to the predominant community out of the way. So those systems may not support you to become the person that you want to be. So you want to put yourself in a good position, financially, physically, socially, emotionally, spiritually, where you can be strong enough to fend for yourself. Not out of some sort of toxic self-reliance, but out of your ability to perform. So you want to make sure that you've developed that. But it may be difficult for you to develop that. You may not be the stereotype of the person who is high performance. You may not be the typical white male rich tech bro who is doing their Huberman Lab super optimization protocols every single day. But you still have to be able to adopt good high performance practices, even if you're sort of the opposite of a person who would be seen as needing like high performance practices or lifestyle or things like that. You still have to do both the care for yourself and then also preparing yourself to be strong enough to deal with the opposition that you're going to face in the world just because people see you as different. And that especially applies to the workplace. Economically, you're probably going to have to find your own way to an extent. The workplace in many ways is more about abusing people to give bosses a rise than it is actual productivity. So when it comes to your financial situation, you are definitely going to want to have more of a self-reliant financial position than normal. The way you achieve this may be a bit different, but you definitely want to put yourself in a good position financially, have a good amount of savings, have a good backup plan for if anything goes wrong. Really, whether that's all the stuff around like debt. Sometimes it's a good idea to carry debt instead of pay it off if it's going to deplete your savings too much. I'm not going to go too much into the nuances of that. But you want to be in a good position economically as best as you can get yourself to the point where you're not going to be basically having to constantly rely on bosses. Again, probably pretty hard if people don't like you and you're having trouble in the workplace already. But if you get to that point, then you want to be in that way. You want to be secure like that. And you want to also obviously consider entrepreneurship, consider things like that will get you to that financial goal. But one thing that you will have to kind of keep in mind is that you're not going to have that same linear progression. Things are going to come about a lot differently for you if you're dealing with this kind of typology. You won't be able to work yourself up the ranks. You'll have to basically leap. That's why stuff like entrepreneurship becomes relevant, is because you're not working your way up from associate stooge to chief stooge to manager to EVP to the C-suite. It's not going to happen like that. It's going to be a bit more of an interesting ride. And you may even, when you're in like a typical workplace system, and this is very sad, but you may even get ridiculed by comparison. This is something that I see commonly with people with disabilities, where somebody will say, oh yeah, I've seen somebody with a worse disability who has done great with the conventional system, and they're working 80 hours a week and they're doing all great and they have the same exact disability as you do. Well, no, they don't have the same exact thing. Each person is individual. We understand that when we're talking about some sort of like high-end executive or athlete or some other type of high performer, their practices are going to be a little bit different. They're going to be a little quirky. They're going to be a little weird in the things that they do. Maybe you're not the person who gives yourself an ice bath every day. Maybe you're not the person who has some wacky superstition about the meal they eat before a game. Maybe things will be a little different. Each person's going to be a little different. But the ridicule does oftentimes come in that form. Is like, for example, on my TikTok at FixerPunk, there was a video I posted a long time ago that keeps getting randomly bumped up the algorithm, and people keep randomly commenting on it. It's about this girl, or actually, I think they're non-binary, so I'm going to use them. I'm not 100% sure. I don't want to misgender, so I sincerely apologize to that person if I am in fact misgendering them. But they are gained a good amount of audience on social media, but they were still living in their mom's house. And there was it sort of became like this sort of generational warfare type debate between like the mom, and all these people kind of on social media going in favor of the mom against her child aged roughly age 20 allegedly, who was dealing with some mental illness and wasn't getting the support at home that they needed around their gender identity, wasn't getting the help they needed around their mental health situation, which was serious and they alleged to be disabling. But they're showing potential in terms of getting audience online and seeking support from people online to try to find a better living situation than their mom's house. And that resulted in a bunch of people criticizing this person on social media extensively. And I keep getting these comments of like, well, my son has schizophrenia and can work as a plumber, is making $80,000 a year. Well, I have a broken back, a broken neck, and I'm wheelchair bound, and yet I go to work every single day without a problem. Yeah, obviously it's good. This podcast is not going to tell you to be extremely lazy. In fact, one of the key principles that I do want to bring up is that is that you can't, even though you will be a lot more unique than others, you don't want to give up on things. You don't want to let their imputation of weakness toward you become a self-fulfilling prophecy. And you have to know that because of the situation you're in, where you're seen as a little bit different, nothing less than peak performance may work for you. You may have to be stricter, you may have to be less strict. The key thing is to find what works for you. You probably can't get away in some ways with things the way normal people can either. There is a quote from that, I don't know who the original source is. I just know that a wrestler named EC3 brought it up at one point. I don't recommend the majority of his work, but I did want to sort of reflect on this quote of, this is a ruthless world and you must be ruthless to cope with it. And is that the way it should be? Absolutely not. No. But you have to have a significant amount. I don't know if I 100% agree with that precept, but you do have to have a significant amount of strength. And especially if you're going to be seen or viewed as different and maybe not supported as much by others around you because you are in a category that is facing some sort of oppression from society. And in that video, referring to this person that was getting kicked out of their mom's house, I said they need to find a better place for themselves where they can perform and be at their best. And that is sort of how the first step of this is finding the right environment and knowing what works for you and sticking with it, along with embracing it. I did mention this on the last episode, but you need to embrace the fact that you are, in fact, the fact that things are getting harder for you means that you have a lot of potential. Know that's who you are, and just knowing that and knowing that the potential is real can stop you from getting super hopeless. And basically, I want you to stop fighting yourself with the negative ideas that others are putting on you. Like in the example of this person, what the mom says about how bad of a person the kid is. Take those ideas out. If you're a person of color, you've heard all these ideas about how people of color are committing all the crimes. You hear all these negative ideas in society. Don't internalize that. Don't take that to heart too much. And you have to really, if you're in a situation where you're already being seen as sort of different in society and you're in this type of situation, what you have to do, and this is way more important than it is for an average person, is to become who you've dreamed of being. And if you don't, it will blow up inside of you in a way. It'll blow up inside of you if you don't become, or at least are taking steps to become the person you dreamed of being. Again, you're not going to climb up the ladder normally. You have to leap up it. Ignoring your problems and just kind of giving up, and sometimes even just feeling better about your failure. Yes, you want to feel better, move on from things you've done wrong, or the fact that you haven't made as much progress. Sometimes that just makes it worse. Becoming weaker makes it worse. But you want to accommodate and care for yourself, but don't succumb to the weakness. Don't succumb to the weakness, because that's a perception that's being put on you to an extent. You don't want to let their imputation of weakness become a self-fulfilling prophecy. And then how do you do that? How do you prevent their weakness from becoming a self-fulfilling prophecy? So you do that by focusing on key practices and knowledge. First off, the knowledge that you create within yourself, your own native knowledge of how you work, how you perform, being in a good environment for that. The environment that allows you to be you is key. Not trying to make you into something you aren't. But it is hard to get the right resources to perform well with a unique personality when you're in an oppressed situation. Invest in yourself when you can. Obviously, the basics: care for your physical and mental health. Be trained up for high stress and know when to back out of something. When something is just too hard for you at the time and you need to prepare yourself for it, or if you need to find a different environment, know when to back out of those things. Like Going back to that mom situation, know when maybe you need to find another place to live. And that's just not the right battle for you to be picking. Getting beaten up before you get up creates a death spiral, and victory, not submission, is the only remedy. You need to find a way that you can get up and say, I earned it, and know that you are, in fact, actually as strong as you are. So just basically laying down and getting pinned by whatever problem it is, whatever form of oppression, whatever form of problem or prejudice that you're facing, is not the solution. It's not going to help you in the long term. There's definitely, and I 100% believe that you have to find ways to rest. Like a lot of people, like you'll find like elite athletes. I read some article about NBA players who randomly nap during the day. And sometimes even the coaches maybe don't like it, but they accept it. There are going to be practices for you that are going to be like that, a bit unusual, but things that you need to do to rest, but that will help you get to the next level. Allow yourself the time to recover, care for your physical and mental health, and do it in the right way that works for you. Again, this is going to be more difficult because you're not going to have the same kind of resources as someone who's more successful. Someone who's commonly, consciously seen as strong, those types of people maybe have gotten more success in society. But you do have to know that you are in that category, but avoid the excessive judgmental rhetoric. As you try to work to build yourself up, you avoid that excessive judgmental rhetoric, but you don't avoid all difficult things. So this is a common thing that sometimes you'll fall into, because when you have this rhetoric internalized in you of, oh my God, I'm so much weaker, so much less than everybody else, and that's all I'm hearing, and all I'm seeing is that I've been defeated a quadrillion times, then you want to stay away from people that are excessively judgmental. Like if you're looking for help or coaching or whatever, or self-help resources, you want to avoid excessively judgmental rhetoric, like the way that the mom was just kind of being demeaning, even though maybe it was just out of frustration to this person, to the child. That's gonna feel judgmental. That's not necessarily the kind of coaching that you need. But you don't avoid all difficult things. You want to take control of your own development. So in some ways they want you to, especially if you're dealing with politically judgmental people or people that are judging a certain social or racial group, they want that group of people to stay weak and basically easy to beat up. And systems, like I said before, systems may not help you in the way that they may help somebody else. And again, this is sad. This is because of the way that we've constructed our society under capitalism. There are people that are getting oppressed. There's prejudice and things like that. Even prejudice that we don't even know existed, like against you. Sometimes within your own family, people will be prejudiced against members of their own family who maybe, if you have a mixed race family, maybe if somebody in the family, especially a kid with a disability that maybe has really good potential, that kid is going to get a lot of flack in some cases. But you want to take control of your own development and do it in your own way, so you don't have to rely on outside forces pushing you to do what you want to do. And when whatever you're doing, you want to focus on results and what you specifically uniquely want. So whatever your goal, your dream is, you want to focus on that and developing the correct behaviors and practices and principles to achieve that, not on behavioral compliance. Remember that your nature is probably to fight back against behavioral control, although some people do better with stricter rules. So you have to find what works best for you. And you can burn out far more easily as well, especially if you're dealing with some sort of chronic stress, chronic trauma. So you may not be the person who's constantly working, even though you hear all the people online saying, well, the solution to all of your problems is to work an 80-hour work week and you can pay off your debt and be strong just like me and be rich like me. That may not be the case for you, and it doesn't have to be the case. So you have to find an environment, even though it's hard to, that'll allow you to use your value and not hurt you. You may not be able to go into the whole constantly working type situation. You may not be working an 80-hour week, even though people want you to do that in order to do well financially. And you do want to be emotionally vulnerable and kind, but don't let yourself get knocked down. That's the main challenge here. Because in some ways, the way that you open up to people and the way that you relate to people and the community that you build with others in a similar situation can be your key to becoming successful, is the kindness and the empathy. Because you've been through a lot, you have the opportunity to be kinder to other people, be nicer to other people, and people like to do business with people they like. So if you're like that, if you're building yourself up, but you're also being good to others, that can help you get more places. I know that sometimes in like the business world, empathy and stuff like that in the conventional world is not valued as much, but there are certainly people with humanity who really value that, and that could become a niche market for you in terms of the business world. But the next step is really preparation. You do have to work a lot harder in some cases because you have strength and capabilities that you don't know that you have. So you have to work harder to discover those things. Sometimes maybe you know it, maybe you don't, but you have to be prepared with those things to share them, because maybe people will see it in you, but maybe people won't see it in you right away. So if you have to toot your own horn, then do so. And it's going to take some time to get to a point where you feel that comfortable, but hey, it will be worth it. And now, when you're seeing this thing, and obviously as you're working hard through these things, it doesn't make like the trauma of everything you've been through go away. So you have to be able to get the right support. You have to be able to get when you feel like there's something going on with you. There are very few hard and fast rules that I apply to just about every situation on this podcast, but one of those I apply to most situations is that when something feels wrong, you need to take action to determine what it is and take action on that as quickly as possible. Don't let things linger for too long. So you do want to be more diligent, and especially if you think you're going to mess up in some way, be more diligent and more careful than usual. Don't let it overwhelm you. But you do want to root out those things that could go wrong ahead of time rather than letting them fester. And that's especially true when it comes to health and your mental health. Get the right mental health care. You need to consider a performance model if possible. A provider that is going to focus on things where you're improving your mental performance rather than just sedating or taking away symptoms. Because what does it really matter if your anxiety is gone, if you're still not achieving your goals, if you're not helping people, if you're not able to serve your community well, you're not able to overcome oppression for yourself and your community and your family, you're not able to create the kind of change that you envisioned, the big goal that you set for yourself initially, you're not becoming the person you want to be, it's still going to burn up inside of you, even if your anxiety is gone, even if it's repressed, if your depression is somehow being masked or covered up, it's still going to become a problem. So you want to work ideally with people that are willing to help support your performance. And do know that when I say you're a repressed warrior, that means that the repression you can break through the repression, and sometimes you'll break through it in the wrong way. So you have to know that your warrior side can come out at the absolute worst possible time in the worst possible way. Be prepared for that, and try to stop it. Obviously, you don't want to get yourself in unnecessary trouble. You want to avoid getting yourself into bad situations. So be prepared and try to avoid those kinds of situations. So if you think you're gonna get a little too angry or whatever, maybe back away from that thing. Maybe it's a little too much passion for the moment. Take some time to think. You have a lot more power than you expect. You may think that you can throw a 60-mile-an-hour fastball, but you're throwing a 90-mile-an-hour fastball. And 90-mile-an-hour fastball is going to be way more injurious than a 60-mile-an-hour fastball. So you have to be able to control that, just like I explained in the last episode. So that those are a few of the key things. I know we're up to like half an hour now, but one of the things is that obviously is that to grow into this sort of identity, one of the things that I've found is helpful is regular intense physical training. So obviously, like, it can be hard to quantify when it comes to situations that are more socially dynamic and complex, like when you're doing things at an intellectual level. It can be hard to conceptualize your strength and really feel it. And sometimes you can also have a lot of stress that is building up inside of your body that you sort of feel in your body, not necessarily a mental thing, but you feel it physically. And also stress can tax your body in certain ways. So if medically appropriate, if you're safe to do so from a medical level, and I definitely recommend getting all of your medical checkups done, and being extra diligent with those, especially if you're under a ton of stress or trauma or whatever, because those things can lead to disease. So do get to your doctor, get your checkups done. But regular intense physical training can help with strength, emotional regulation, and to create confidence. And you may have to be more disciplined about it than normal. Maybe, again, you may not be the kind of person who can get away with like being out of the gym for too long, and slacking off on it. So that's one thing, because then when you start to actually feel, and this is something where you're in a little bit more control of yourself, obviously social determinants of health and all that stuff, your own intrinsic health issues and all of that. But I have noticed that I've been pretty athletic for a good deal of my life. But I have gotten really, really serious about lifting weights, like almost like bodybuilding type training. And I've noticed that actually really progresses you and changes how you feel about things mentally as well. Probably more intense cardio training is going to help more with like stress regulation and stress tolerance over time. I need to get better about that. I am getting better about that. But what you'll notice, and I think I first noticed this when I was in college, it's like, okay, after a good day after like, I don't know, not a good day, like a good week or two of seriously lifting. And I was such an on and off lifter in college. Honestly wish I would have used that time better when I had a gym so close by and all that. But I'm making up for lost time now. Is that I noticed that I was a lot more confident. Like, just that feeling, especially like this is going to be especially true for men, but that feeling of like that you're really like strong, like, and the way that even like your clothes fit and the way that you start to look, especially if you're lifting really heavy weights and like your waist is narrower than your chest by a good margin and your arms are starting to fill out a little bit. I'm nowhere near being jacked. But when you get to that point, you start to believe a lot more in your strength in like just about every other area of life. It's not a magic solution, but it does help quite a bit, and it does help you to start to believe in your own ability to change things, because you can like literally see how your body is changing over time. It may be marginal. It can be a little demoralizing at times because it can take a lot of time. But you can start to see it, and then you can start to really feel the difference in terms of confidence. And you start to see, when you start to like see, at least for me, when you start to see something that looks a little bit more like you're a really strong person, like you don't look as weak anymore when you look at yourself in the mirror, that can really change your attitude toward yourself overall. And again, I go pretty intense. I've explained, I think, in prior episodes, kind of my routine. I don't necessarily want you to copy what I'm doing because it may not be right for you. Again, you need to have regular health screenings by a good doctor. Make sure that you're healthy enough to take on intense physical activity. I do go to the gym like five days a week, anywhere between like an hour and a half. A lot of heavy lifting, not necessarily again, it's going to have to be unique to you. For me, I'm pretty uncoordinated, so I've stuck to like the whole machine-based routines with only a little bit of barbell work and dumbbell work every once in a while, but basically hitting every muscle group once to twice a week with about 10 to 12 sets. But I'm kind of carrying, it's not the point of this episode really. I'll have to do a bit of a better, more researched episode on workout programs. But again, you have to find exactly what's right for you, whether there's more structure, less structure, discipline. Like I've had to adjust to like doing weekly, like 10 to 12 sets a week. That's something that I'm doing it on a weekly basis, even though some workout programs will be like, you need to train this exact number of sets at each workout, and this day has to be this type of workout. I'm just like, if I can get to that cumulative number of sets a week, then I'll be good. Maybe it's not ideal, but it works for me. So once you get that in place, you have sort of the mindset of knowing that you are strong enough to do these things. You don't internalize the negative things that other people are putting on you. You find like the right environment when it comes to especially when it comes to the workplace. Sometimes you're going to have to create that environment. Policy change is needed to create a more inclusive world that doesn't require an extreme level of victory to survive it. And you can start to create change. Obviously, you probably are in this situation where you're being demeaned because you're trying to create change. You're probably trying to organize your workplace already. Consider stuff like entrepreneurship, but also obviously continue, if you are on the pathway to unionizing your workplace, keep going on that. If you see a good path for that, your coworkers are going along with it. Continue along with that. Continue along with social change. Get in a situation where you're going to be both economically stronger as well as others around you. And having that community around you and being in an environment where you can actually thrive. Making sure to invest in yourself as best as possible. Keep yourself economically safe and sound so that, hey, if you wind up unionizing, you wind up on strike, you can take care of things. You can even possibly support others financially through the whole process. And know that this will probably be also a collective process, but keep yourself individually well and healthy and strong. Also physically, just like I explained, get all your health screenings, make sure that you are able to take the kind of rest and recovery that you need. And know that it may look different from other people and how other people do things, but it's still just as valid. The way you're doing things, once you find exactly what works for you, try your best to stick to it. Some people require a lot more rigid, more disciplined things. Other people don't. Most important thing is to figure out what exactly works for you and get the support that you need. If you need help, it's not a bad thing to ask for help. Ask for help in the right way from people that get what you are like, and make sure that it's people who get your values, your ideas, your personalities, and you may need to offload some things to others. And know that just because you're not perfect and maybe you haven't had the support or love from others and haven't had the victory of success doesn't mean you aren't capable of great things. And you can achieve the success that you want, whether in your personal life, in your business, your work life, and in advocating for others, and especially use your power once you have gotten to that point, once you've found your way to try to help others and also help people along the way. If you're one of those people who is a leader of an advocacy or nonprofit organization, if you have some sort of message or idea that you want to advocate for, and you're looking for the right way to communicate that message, if you need support in organizing your advocacy project, your community improvement nonprofit project, if you need help communicating your socially responsible business message to the public, please reach out to me through my business Offspeed Solutions, offspeedsolutions.com. I'll put the link in the description. What I do is I help organizations create a good message, find ways to reach the key stakeholders they need to, the key customers for businesses, using all forms of marketing, all areas of digital marketing, social media, advertising, all designed with the socially responsible business or the advocacy organization in mind. I have quite a bit of experience working with a lot of different organizations, and I'd love to be able to help you. And I am the kind of person who will work with you and work with your individual situation, your values, your goals, your identity. So please reach out, go to offspeedsolutions.com. If you have any questions from this episode, if you're going through a situation right now that you just want to vent about, if there's somebody out there, if there's something out there that's wrong in politics or in society that you want me to comment on, call in 844-477-PUNK, 844-477-7865. Call in, leave a message, and you might get your message played on the next episode. Please follow me on social media at FixerPunk on Instagram and TikTok, FIXERPUNK, at Grayson Nation, GREYSONNATION on Twitter. Thank you so much for joining me for what is unfortunately a pretty long episode, or maybe fortunately. Give me your feedback. Call in 844-477-PUNK, 844-477-7865. Let me know what you thought, and I would love to see you again on the next episode. Thank you for choosing to spend some of your time with me today. This content is for entertainment and general informational purposes only. We do not warrant or guarantee the accuracy of the information herein. If you suspect any medical or mental health concern, please promptly consult a qualified physician. The listener should not rely solely upon this content and consult a competent professional before deciding to follow any course of action.